now that we've spoiled the film, shall we start the episode?
Sure.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the O7 podcast. Why are you laughing? It's not funny.
Like, hello, everyone. You sound like Dr. Nick from The Simpsons.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the O7 podcast, a show exclusively about the films of 2007. I'm Tay Mawson, and I'm joined by my co-host, Lucy Alfred. Lucy, how are you this week?
I'm good, thanks. You cheered me up.
How low do I need to prostrate myself in apology for you not enjoying Eastern Promises?
Yeah, quite low. I was imagining Eastern Promises something set in the east of from where we are currently. Like deserty, beautiful, warm. I'm not really sure what the promise is even of this film. Who's making a promise? What is the promise? Yeah, it was bleak. And I described it in my notes as quite unpleasant. I didn't enjoy it. I also don't think it's that good of a film anyway, regardless of like all of the bits that I really didn't like, which we'll go into. In and of itself, I was like, it's not that great. Like I can deal with the things that I didn't enjoy if the film itself is really good. Take No Country for Old Men. It's got a lot of violence in it, but it's not gratuitous because it's integral for the story. Whereas this just felt like a kind of film with loads of full frontal aggression, violence, and sexual violence that I didn't enjoy.
Yeah, fair enough.
So get on the floor. Yeah,
it's a tough watch. I think it's a good film, but I do have some issues. Funnily enough, they're completely separate to the ones that you've got. It's interesting you bring up No Country because when we talked about No Country, I talked about how slow but absorbing it felt. And this was similar in that if you look at it dispassionately, it felt just like a bunch of scenes strung together well, but not necessarily in the most compelling way. It was absorbing, but I think what really helps is Viggo Mortensen. He is so good in this. I probably fixated a bit on his performance in order to help me get along with it.
Same, really. Without him, it would be like shit.
Well, I think this is what I like about it is very subtle, and he is the epicenter of that subtlety. How he plays this character, he's so good in it that I think that it almost gets a pass for some of the other stuff which I didn't enjoy. The fact that BBC Films flashes up at the start of it was really telling and stuck with me because it felt like such a BBC thing, and that's unfair, I think, because it's not like saying it's a Merchant Ivory film, but it was like it's kind of in the same ballpark in that it felt I kind of got American Wealth in London vibes where it was so quintessentially British. I think one of the issues with doing a quote unquote English film for a non-English director is that they will see an exchange and go, oh, this feels English, and they'll keep it in. And the one I'm thinking of is when Stepan misspeaks. He says, you should bury her secrets with her bodies. And Naomi Watts' character, Anna, picks him up and says, it's body, singular. And like that feels quintessentially like a thing that you'd see in an English production that David Cronenberg felt legitimizes the Englishness or the Britishness of the production. But I think for me, that is a big turn off, that aspect of it. But then I'm British, so like, you know, I'm used to seeing it, and I've seen enough of it to know that like, you know, this is to me a mark that this is of a level and not much above that level. Like this is on a par, and it's like, okay, fine, you've just like knocked off some points for including I know this is really petty, but the Trafalgar fucking Hospital, like, oh yeah, why don't you just call it the Winston Churchill General Hospital or something, the Battle of Waterloo General Infirmary? You know, it's like, oh fucking hell, do you really have to do this? Do you have to just call it St Mary's or, you know, it doesn't matter. Like, oh, it's called the Florence Nightingale Hospital for the hideously English. I don't know. It's just like, why do you have to do this? A British director would be like, yeah, we don't. I'm not going to do that. We're not going to do that.
Also, where was it filmed in London? Because I couldn't really place it.
Yeah, this is the other problem with being a British person and watching, or certainly someone who's lived around London and then watching films that are based in London.
Yeah.
Is like you're looking at all the street corners and the shop names and stuff. And going, do I know that?
Yeah.
No, you don't, because they've changed that. They change all the frickin' names. But, you know, I think the plot I liked, but mostly I like Viggo Mortensen in it.
Yeah, he was top of my list of things that I enjoyed. The way that I perceived his performance was, I felt like he'd really studied someone who is speaking English as like a second language, because often when you're speaking to someone who doesn't speak English that well, they will make up for what they're trying to say with facial expressions and body language. And he really does that in this film. And I think, and that again, it sort of backs up what you were saying about his facial expressions. Like, he says a lot with his face without, opening his mouth. And I think that was just brilliant. I really believed that he was this Russian mafia guy. And I thought that was excellent. I also think he did a really good job of the Russian accent, and there was a lot of Russian spoken by non-native Russian speakers. It wasn't like the odd word here or there. There was quite a lot of dialogue. I thought that was really impressive. They did a really good job of making it feel authentic. So yeah, I can say that there are a few other things I liked about the film, but I agree with you on Viggo Mortensen. I think he did a smashing job. Yeah, and he holds the film together, and like in exactly the same way as you, I really did hold on to him, because Naomi Watts, come on.
Yeah.
We described her as like, I said she's like the poor man's Nicole Kidman, and then Phil was like, oh, what you mean Nicole Kidman from Team?
While we're gushing over Viggo Mortensen, Eastern Promises features Nikolai, played by Viggo Mortensen, who is both ruthless and mysterious. He has ties to one of the most dangerous crime families in London. He crosses paths with Anna, played by Naomi Watts, a midwife who has come across potentially damaging evidence against the family, which forces him to set in motion a plan of deceit, death, and retribution. That synopsis, so I didn't write that, obviously, but it does feel very loaded with like there's a big twist coming and you have to, get ready, folks.
Yeah.
I'm going to approach this synopsis from the other angle now. This is a bit longer, bear with me. Everyone get comfy. The story is set in London and orbits around the Russian mafia, whose activities are put at risk when a young pregnant girl, Tatiana, collapses and later dies in hospital. Naomi Watts plays Anna, the midwife who delivers Tatiana's baby, and in her belongings she finds a diary written in Russian. The diary also contains a business card for a local Russian restaurant, and it's upon going there that Anna meets the owner, Semyon, played by Armin Mueller-Stahl, who offers to translate the diary for her. It's here she also meets Nikolai, played by Viggo Mortensen, who is a driver for Semyon. Little does Anna know that Semyon and his family were deeply involved with Tatiana, and that Nikolai is a lot more than just a driver, and that her possession of Tatiana's diary puts Anna in serious danger. Which feels very much more Anna-centred, because I do feel like, I mean, it is a sort of 50-50 split in terms of like, whose story this film is telling. I feel like Anna gets a fairer shake in terms of characterization and sort of motivation. But yeah, it's interesting that there are synopses that heavily focus on Nikolai.
Patriarchy, man.
Well, yeah. So I think we've named most of the main cast. Who have I missed, Lucy?
You've missed Vincent Cassel, who plays Kirill, the son of Semyon.
Yep.
Vincent Cassel, you might recognise from La Haine and Black Swan, famous French actor. Him.
Yep. Sexy man. Sexy man?
No, not for me.
No?
No.
Oh, just checking.
No.
Just testing.
No
People
sexy
like
people
him.
in this film for me.
No?
No.
All right.
No.
Good, well, you can focus then.
Excuse me, I can focus. I can multitask.
You always go bloody...
No, but I actually do want to talk about this. This is going to be a nice segue into what I really want to talk about.
Oh, great.
Yeah, about male and female perceptions of specifically action films. Sinead Cusack. I thought she might be a Cusack. She had like a face that I kind of recognised. She plays Helen, Anna's mum.
Yep.
Then we have Donald Sumter, who plays Yuri, who is actually not named in the film, as far as I'm aware, but he is the police officer who is in contact, we later discover, with Nikolai. I feel like they could have made more of that storyline. It was really like, I felt like that was just shoved in at the end, but anyway, I guess that's the twist, isn't it?
Is he the guy on the police guy on the beach who talks about the identifying the Russian?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, okay.
Knows a lot about
Got
them.
you.
He is from Game of Thrones. Cannot remember the name of the character he plays, but he's one of Ed Stark's guys. He looks after the little boy that gets
Is he a
made
maester?
disabled.
He looks like a maester.
Maester, maybe, yeah. Wears a cloaky thing.
Yeah.
And then finally, Joseph Alton, who plays Ekrem, the sort of, as he said, simpleton. He also plays Pip in Game of Thrones. He just hasn't aged. Hasn't aged, that guy.
No, I don't think he... Well, Game of Thrones is after Eastern Promises, but I don't think he's aged even now.
No. He always crops up in like gangstery type things or crime dramas. I swear he was in like Line of Duty as well. He just always plays that guy. Also, can we talk about Armin Mueller-Stahl, who plays Semyon? Because I kept thinking he sounds German. And with the name
German.
like Mueller-Stahl must be German. But
Yep.
his German accent was not very well disguised when he was playing.
Oh, really?
Russian. Yeah, I was like, he sounds like Arnie.
Should we? So I did ask some Russian people about their thoughts on this film and the accents in it.
What?
No, I did it. I didn't really. I actually got a compliment about the Ratatouille episode. I love the fact that you asked some French people about how offensive they found Ratatouille. And I thought, I don't have time now to talk to some Russians about their thoughts on the accents in this film.
I don't really know any Russians.
But I actually didn't pick up on Vincent Cassel's Franco-Russian or Armin Mueller-Stahl's Germano-Russian. I think I was just too locked into Viggo Mortensen's pseudo-Russian.
I think his was really good.
Yeah.
He never sounded anything other than Russian. Vincent Vincent, was rubbish.
Hey man, you fuck you, good fuck
like,
this bitch.
The American, like I was like, what?
Yeah, I know. Bless him. I mean, we can't. I don't know that we can really hold him to task for that. But yeah, it must be tricky.
But also, like, why not cast someone who's actually Russian or from that part of the world?
2007, we didn't have anyone. We didn't know any Russians.
But why did they cast Vincent Cassel? Like, was he even a big name, really, in 2007?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah? Okay.
At that point, he'd been in whichever one of the Ocean sequels he was in.
I actually was looking him up on IMDb, and he's done loads of, like, voices for, like, Tekken and stuff. I think the mighty has fallen with him. He's just, like, doing voiceovers for video games. Yeah.
Gosh.
Strange casting.
But yeah, you're not alone on the Viggo love for his accent.
It's really good.
He apparently it's I wouldn't say widely viewed, but like the internet seems to love it or is approving. There is some Wired accent expert guy who apparently praised it in one of his roundups of actors doing accents, but I couldn't find it to verify that. But
Right.
Yeah.
I see.
He did immerse himself, didn't he? So
yeah,
he did
I
some
mean,
research.
he's done a great job, really great job.
We'll get into it in Triv.
In Triv, yeah. He also, I didn't do any Triv this time. I did a lot
That's
more
all right.
prep for other things, which
That's fine. I got
is
some.
a nice little segue. So obviously I mentioned where you were making fun of me for being distracted by attractive men in films. But what I wanted to talk about was the reaction I had to this film versus my boyfriend sat next to me. And actually, when I've talked about this film, like even today, spoke about it with my colleague from work, a guy, and he was like, "What are you doing on your podcast this evening?" I said Eastern Promises. He was like, "Great film," and I was like, "Interesting you say that because I think it's a guy's
It's a guy
film.
movie, isn't it?
It's a guy film." And I really don't want to gender this in that way. That's not really me because I do actually love an action film and I like a drama, and you know, I'm not that girl, that girl.
Yep.
But I was recoiling a lot in this film, and and Phil just didn't do that. He kind of winced a bit, but he kept watching and he didn't look away. And I realised that like that is normal. Whenever I've watched like anything violent with a guy, they don't react in the same way to me. And I said to Phil, I was like, I'm not doing this because you're here. I would do this if you weren't here. I cannot watch it. I just cannot watch it. And
The sex scene.
More the violence, more the like the scene in the sauna with the arms breaking and the thumbs in the eyes and the knife in the back of the neck. I mean, it was really a lot. Also Ekrem getting his throat cut and you see it all coming out.
Oh, it looks so fake though.
Yeah, it does look so fake. And I know we've talked about this a lot with like the horror films we've watched.
Yeah,
But
Sweeney Todd.
For some reason, it's different. It's a different reaction. I think it's because Sweeney Todd is so fantastical and it was so overblown and unrealistic that you kind of, I don't really look away. I winced a bit and I was a bit like, ugh, but I didn't look away. Whereas this is like...
You were talking about how much you love the blood.
Yeah, I know, but this is different because they actually looked like they were having a fight. They really looked like they were fighting for their lives in that sauna. And so first of all, that was actually brilliant, like really well choreographed. But
Hell yeah.
Because he's nude as well, must have been quite difficult to do. But it got me thinking, like, is there something in male-female psyche? And obviously I'm talking about like, you know, cisgender, male, female, whatever, of why I react like that and why guys apparently don't and enjoy watching gory action films. And then it kind of feeds into the stereotype of like, girls like romance. How many times I've been like, I love a bit of romance. And guys like action films, yeah, I can't watch any lovey-dovey stuff. And yeah, so I did a little bit of research. I couldn't really go into it in terms of like reading all the essays that Google AI cited. But I just sort of said, the prompt I gave it was like essays on male and female reactions to violence in films. And the sort of synopsis was scholarly research indicates significant gender differences in reactions to film violence, generally finding that men tend to view violence as more positive or entertaining, while women tend to experience more negative emotions such as disgust, anxiety, and fear. So, yeah, women also tend to exhibit a greater physiological startle response to violent scenes in men. And I'm not joking. I was actually like curled away from the TV, like covering up. And I said, please tell me when it's over. Because I just can't watch it.
Do you think it's related to the fact that you'd already seen some sexual violence in the same film?
No, because I didn't look away at that. I didn't find it pleasant at all. But
no, it's not. I
didn't
don't think it's meant to be, right? I didn't think it was like titillating.
No, not at all. But it's more just like the punching and the blood and the yeah. It just I guess when it's done really realistically, it just feels believable. And then I just couldn't watch it. And it's that sort of, I guess, like fight or flight, that kind of thing. But yeah, so just kind of going back to just the little bit of research that I did do. What I found interesting was when men and women are asked about films, men are more likely to remember specific details about the blood and the gore, while women are more likely to mention emotional content. And I just thought it was super interesting. And of course, like, I'll send the links to you so we can put it in the show notes, so we can actually, if people want to, they can do a bit of deep diving into it. But I did think it was really interesting, because it was such a big reaction. But yeah, so that's what I wanted to talk about. What do you think?
Well, let's keep the focus on those two scenes, right? Firstly, I'm watching that scene where Nikolai is having sex with one of the prostitutes, basically, seemingly at the behest of Kirill, right? He didn't seem to want to do it, or he definitely wasn't interested in doing it, and yet he does it. And two things were happening in my mind when that scene was playing out. Firstly, I started to fixate on the what plays out as the sort of power struggle or the power dynamic between those two men. It's really interesting, right? And it becomes more and more interesting throughout the rest of the film. But simultaneously, I was watching that scene going, oh no, I need to talk about this with Lucy.
Yeah.
And I've made Lucy watch this scene, and I just think, oh, this is bad. There's not really, the sort of giving that money and that kind of potential way out doesn't feel like redemption for this guy. I don't think he is redeemed. And I don't think you're supposed to feel like he is a redeemable character, much like Anton Chigurh in that sense, right? He has an agenda, and he's sacrificed things, and it will continue to do so. I think that's one of the themes is sacrifice. But and then if we move away from that scene and onto the fight scene, which is like so widely praised, there's two things that occurred to me while I was watching that scene. One is, that seems like the worst possible. You could never feel more vulnerable than you are in a bathhouse, in a sauna, and worse than that, he's not got a towel. He's ditched his towel, right? So I'm like, oh my God, okay. And thinking about, like, logistically, psychologically, you would be fucked, because you would you would freeze in that moment, I think, because you're like, what do I do that doesn't end in something horrific here? But the other thing, and this was almost a distraction, maybe it was a sort of subconscious, deliberate distraction, was, and this is something I do with far too many films, is that I watch injury and go, that wouldn't kill you. And it's partly because I live with a physician, and so this comes up a lot in films, is like, but he's not going to die from that. I mean, it's not great. Like the big guy, Taimur Hassan, he wouldn't die from a short blade through the eye. The fact that he'd been stabbed in the heart, yeah, maybe. But like, this is the nonsense that I busy my mind with when I'm watching this stuff, is like, how feasible is it that these are life-threatening injuries? They are grotesque, grim, they are really grave injuries, but like not necessarily ones that would kill you. It might put him out of action long enough for that character, for Nikolai to get out of there, and then I guess the flip side of that was, he had a couple of like superficial to deep cuts, a few of them on his body. I don't think he would be in a hospital, like on an IV, after all of that.
So is this how you get through the violence? Is you disassociate and you're like overanalyzing? Not
really. I don't know that I'm massively squeamish, but it's definitely like stuff I don't want to watch. I don't think it's that. It's just like me being a knob and just thinking, oh, that's kind of unrealistic, Yeah, yeah, cut his arm off. So that's interesting. That's our female and male brains at work there. Well, we're viewing stuff that is kind of challenging, I think. And so I'm sure there's lots to the stuff that you've been reading.
Yeah, definitely. It's interesting that you said the language you said was Nikolai's having sex with the prostitute, because I describe it as rape. Because she's not there.
She's been trafficked.
She's not choosing to be there.
No.
She's not empowered. She's not. This isn't her job for her. She's a slave, literally a sex slave. And in fact, Kirill uses that language. Actually, no, Nikolai uses that language, like slaves have babies and into slavery, like really awful. And they do it. I'm in two minds about sex scenes in films and television. I think unless it really helps to propel the narrative and help to tell the story or give colour to the character, you just don't need to see it. A lot of the time it is just there to like titillate. Of course, this isn't titillating. And it does, as you say, help to uncover that power dynamic between Nikolai and Kirill. And obviously later we find out that potentially Kirill's gay. So there might even be like a sexual element of watching a man.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I think he's definitely gay. Yeah.
So there could be something in that. Whether or not we definitely needed to see it in that way, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
And I was like, I can't remember. You don't often see rape scenes. And I know that, it's not necessarily like a traditional rape scene. I don't really feel really uncomfortable saying that.
Yeah, she's not like I know what you mean. She's not fighting or anything, right?
Yeah. But it reminded me of, my reaction reminded me a bit of the French film Base Moi. And also Irreversible, that kind of like full frontal sight of very realistic looking sex that is like, or rape that's just a bit much. I think if it hadn't been for the two characters and that power dynamic, I just think we didn't need to see it. So I'm hoping that was Cronenberg's intention, to use that scene to help tell a bit of the story. But it is unpleasant. It's not a very nice film to watch.
This is a weird thing to. I agree. I mean, this is a weird thing to say about Cronenberg's films, but like he is basically just fixated on bodies for sure. Like it's not always gratuitous in his films, but there's a lot of like body related stuff. That's kind of what he's known for. And I vaguely recall a very graphic sex scene in the previous Viggo Mortensen and David Cronenberg film, A History of Violence. But I think he's just giving someone oral sex, but it's his partner, right? They are both they're both having sex.
Consenting.
They're both willing, consenting. Yeah. And so, I think he likes to shock, but I don't know that he wanted to film like a rape scene in the same way. He's a guy. I think he's not going to see it in the same way. He's going to see it the same way I presented it, as like this sex scene. But you are right. I think it is. You're saying it is what it is, and that's correct. But I don't know. I don't know that Cronenberg is as gratuitous in that way as, say, Paul Verhoeven and his films. Where he's a bit more of a sensationalist in that way. Yeah,
it's so interesting, isn't it? Because obviously, I mentioned that I've been rewatching Rivals.
Rivals.
Yeah, I think Riders is another Ginny Cooper book, and obviously it's like chick lit originally, and it's TV made for the female gaze, and so the sex in that is, and it's much like the sex in Bridgerton, it is completely different. Obviously there's no like rape, prostitution, whatever, but in terms of just the other ways that sex is shown on screen when it's not a male director is such a marked difference. Lots of stuff about like hands and where hands are and eye contact and all of that kind of stuff.
It's not just fucked her with my dick.
Exactly. And even when it's
Yeah.
passionate and fiery, it's still different. It's still made for the female gaze.
Yeah. I think we're talking about description, aren't we?
Yeah.
This is about a difference in this is male female brain stuff, but this is like how words and language is used differently.
Yeah. Definitely. Well, we've really this film's clearly got us thinking a lot, so that's good. No complaints there.
I mean, the two main things for me are the story, which I think is structured in a way that, you know, is not boring and keeps you absorbed. It is an absorbing film. That's kind of the execution of it. So that kept me going. But really, the thing that really pulls it together is Mortensen's performance. Other than that, if you remove Mortensen and you remove the big name director, this felt like a BBC sort of feature length drama. It felt like some of Stephen Knight's earlier stuff, like Dirty Pretty Things, just with different actors. In that similar themes in there, similar like stuff in there that's pretty off-putting and kind of distasteful, and, you know, serious. But I think it just gets elevated firstly by having someone like Cronenberg there, who definitely has an agenda about how he wants to present bodies and how he wants to kind of tailor the story, which is not his story, to the things that he really likes to kind of explore and get into.
Yeah.
And Viggo Mortensen. Otherwise, you know, you could pick this up and watch it and enjoy it to, you know, maybe enjoy is not the right word, but, you know, be absorbed by it, and it could get you thinking, but you'll put it down again. But it's only because of those two artists, I think, that it gets elevated, and it might stay with you for a little bit longer.
Yeah.
And it might compel two people to talk about it on a podcast.
Yeah, we couldn't have it too nice after Ratatouille and Stardust. You had to bring me down a peg or two, bring me back down to reality. The realities of organised Russian crime in London.
Yeah, you're right. I felt we'd been riding high on Ratatouille and Stardust, and it's time to take a right turn into hell.
Smack round the head. Smack round the head, literally.
Stop enjoying yourself.
Well, I have to say, I've really pretty much covered the things I like already. Viggo Mortensen's face acting, the amount of Russian spoken, the reality of someone who goes so deep undercover they end up being as bad as the baddies.
Yep.
And not sure if I can find it in myself to have sympathy for him crying at the very end, but I acknowledge the sentiment and intention. And then finally, Uncle Stepan. He somehow offered comic relief with his Russian furry hat. Constant mentions of like being in the KGB and everyone going, "You weren't in the KGB." Somehow he was funny. I don't know if he was supposed to be funny, but he was quite funny.
That joke, I was an auxiliary. That was in my list of jokes. The other joke that I thought was worthy of noting down was Viggo Mortensen's character saying, "Get bus," when he couldn't get a bike to start. That was fun. While we're on this, I think that it was good that Vincent Cassel just chewed up every scene. I think you needed that in contrast to just how kind of, you know, understated Mortensen is. He was really not overacting, but like his character was obviously like really fired up all the time. And I think that added weight to their sort of weird power dynamic between those two, and just how fucked up Kirill is. Like he's a son, just wants his dad's recognition, and is gay, right? I think that's kind of fairly definitive, and that is not a good thing to be in a Russian crime syndicate. He's definitely a piece of shit through the whole film, and you see why.
Yes.
And so it's important, I think, for him to really go for it. I've still got stuff to talk about.
Wow, you liked a lot about this film.
Firstly, I think that like a ton of research went into this film, like in terms of not just the writer, but I think Cronenberg and Mortensen talk about how into Russian culture and, you know, the nature of this real criminal organization they get into. There's a Wired expert who talks about the treatment of the Russian mafia in this, and all the stuff about tattoos and the identifying of people and having their entire criminal histories tattooed on their bodies, and lauded the film for being so detailed and sort of accurate, and that's impressive to me. And in relation to that, the scene where Nikolai is being sort of auditioned by all these kind of crime bosses, there was a bit in it that I thought was particularly good, and that was he sat there in his pants, right? And these dudes are all taking turns to kind of ask him difficult questions or just flat out insult him. And one of them says, oh, you know, your mum was a whore and your dad was a joke, or I don't know, I can't remember, was weak for working for the government. And Viggo Mortensen does a really interesting thing. He stands up, which I took as being an act of defiance, but also he agrees with them. And I think that those two sort of contradictory things were a really interesting, deliberate response from his character. Like, he is showing that he won't stand for that, but he's also showing that he is, you know, at their kind of beck and call, or he will play along. And I thought that was a really interesting thing to add to that scene. There's loads of little details that Viggo Mortensen added to this stuff. Like, you know, the bit where he just puts the cigarette on his tongue, that was him just making that up.
Really?
And yeah, and Cronenberg like jokes about it because he says, well, I loved it when he first did it, and he said, but we've got a couple more takes to do of this thing, so Viggo Mortensen had to suck it up and do it a few more times. Yeah. There's just, he obviously went to Russia and just absorbed a lot of Russian culture for a while. And, you know, they were sharing like poetry and novels and all this kind of stuff, and really they really dug in. And I think the fact that they do that speaks to, you know, their kind of commitment to making something genuinely, I don't know, authentic. And it has been praised for its authenticity. I just like that when people go to those kind of lengths. And I think just lastly, I just like how nuanced it was. There's so much you could miss from watching this, I think, because it's just not telegraphed in any obvious movie way. It's just really kind of, you have to kind of dig into it to really get it. Cronenberg and Mortensen and their immersion in everything that they researched and learned about in order to get into this made the film that much more enjoyable, if you can call it enjoyable, or that much more watchable. Lucy, tell me about what you hated.
One of the things I didn't like, and it's very contradictory to what you've been saying, is the pace. I thought the pace felt a bit samey, and kind of the word I used to describe it is just gave kind of an overall beige vibe. Like, I don't feel like there was any crescendos or speeding up of the narrative. It was just very flat. And you were talking about No Country for Old Men being slow, and therefore you get absorbed in it. Whereas I wouldn't say this is slow. It's just bleh. And so I just don't feel like it got anywhere, you know? And then all of a sudden at the end we're supposed to have a swell of emotion when, for some inexplicable reason, Anna and Nikolai snog after they've saved the baby. Completely unnecessary.
I know, that's
weird,
so strange.
Weird. Very 2007. It's like, we need to tick all the boxes. We need to have some sort of redemptive character, for redemptive aspect of the main baddie, and then we got to have a kiss, and we got to have this. I was just like, nah, that's just rubbish. But that was the only kind of like slight elevation in emotion because they'd been racing to go and save the baby. But other than that, nah. Just I felt the pace was dirgy. But that might be because I just wasn't loving the film anyway. So you were enjoying it and therefore liked the pace, and then...
No, I think I picked up on it in that I agree in that that's what I was getting at when I was saying it felt like a very BBC level kind of like, endeavour, was that it just felt like a run-of-the-mill feature-length thriller, that it could have been anyone. I think I was locked in at that point. That's the thing. I was dialed into to Mortensen, and definitely all the stuff where he is in it held my attention so much more.
Definitely.
All of the scenes without him in seemed to propel the viewer towards the scenes with him in. Like they felt like they just needed to happen in order to progress the plot to get to the Nikolai bits. That's what it felt like.
Get to the Nikolai bits. All destinations lead to Nikolai.
And his bits. Hey?
Don't see too many of them, though. Little flashes.
No, I know. It's very well done.
Yeah.
I don't think they shot that in a way that they were worried about that. Like, I don't know that they were being coy about like his willy placements. What do you think? It could have wiggled around. It could have wiggly wagglied around all over the place. It could have been like helicopter time.
No, I don't think they were worried about that. If they were worried about that, they wouldn't have written into the film that there's a naked fight scene.
The sauna scene in the script, it just says they fight in the sauna.
Oh, right.
That was it.
They fight.
Yeah.
In terms of the rest of the things I didn't like, we've obviously already... Can I talk about the twisty bit here? Can we talk about it?
Sure. Yeah.
So it was, to me, quite obvious quite early on that there was more to Nikolai than meets the eye. And I did think, I bet he's a spy. I didn't say it, but I was like, I bet he's a spy. And when you now sort of looking back at the film with that knowledge, it's like, obviously, because why was he being so kind? But one of the things and then thinking about that, what I found frustrating was, given how Semyon is set up as this all-knowing king, and he's, is on top of everything that goes on in his organisation, are we really supposed to believe that a guy like him in real life wouldn't have known that Nikolai was a spy? And also I feel like a spy that was that entrenched into this underworld wouldn't risk outing himself by like saving a prostitute via the police, because obviously like the line is super clear. Like the one prostitute that he had relations with the day before is the only one that gets taken away by the police. Like, Kirill's stupid, but he's not that stupid. So I just thought that was a bit ham-fisted. As I said, didn't really get why there was a kiss at the end. Thought it was naff. And another thing that was naff, which my boyfriend pointed out, was Naomi Watts riding on the motorbike. He said it looks like a classic James Bond film when they're clearly not on a bike. He's like, she's not riding that motorbike. He is a motorcyclist. He was like, she's not riding that bike. That's rubbish. That's so naff. So that's not mine. That is his dislike. But I thought it was worth mentioning because it is a bit pants. So I didn't love this film, but it's okay because sometimes I don't like them.
Yeah. So themes then.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot here. Mm-hmm. Stephen Knight wrote a film about exploitation and identity, I guess. Anna is half Russian and is obviously, she doesn't speak Russian. I don't think she has much exposure to the Russian side of her heritage. And so there's a bit of identity in there, but there's a lot more identity in Nikolai, in that, he obviously is from Russia and he has steeped himself in Russian criminal activity to the point where he's been to prison. He's had all of this criminal history tattooed on him. We don't really know if he just grew up a criminal and then decided to become, a sort of double agent kind of thing, right? Or if he is playing the long game as a sort of, a man of the law. But he is struggling to find himself, I think, or he's struggling to maintain an identity in several different worlds. And then you've got, Cronenberg's kind of staple around bodies and how do the bodies play into identity? How does Viggo Mortensen's body play into his identity? You know, all of that stuff. So those are the kind of obvious ones, I think. What am I missing here?
Daddy issues.
Oh my God, so big time daddy issues.
Big time daddy issues.
Yeah, about masking who you really are, and struggling with your true identity.
Yeah.
Right, well, that's themes. What else do we want to talk about?
Anything more or less relevant?
In 2025?
Yeah.
Well, this film has been remade several times since 2007. It's called the John Wick films. I mean, really, what? They are, like, basically, we're so fucking dumb that we need this kind of story told through an action film. John Wick is a time-served Russian criminal living in a criminal underworld, and we learn that through the process of the film. All right, Nikolai is from the outset a criminal, Russian criminal. So it's slightly different, but what in 2007, a big willy waving fight in a sauna, that wouldn't cut it in 2025. We need bulletproof suits and guns coming out of our hoo-has to really get us through.
But we did have that in 2007. We did have overblown action and crash bang wallops. I think this film wasn't trying to be that, and I think there are still films made today that are not trying to be crash bang wallop explosions.
Yeah. No, I know.
But I do think they're fewer and far between, and they tend to be more indie niche films. Anything more or less relevant? So, as I've said countless times, I think this film is an unpleasant watch, and I think it would always have been an unpleasant watch. I don't think I'd have been like happy-go-lucky watching this in 2007. However, with the current news reel of Jeffrey Epstein very much in the foreground at the moment, something that I couldn't help but do was draw parallels between the girls in the brothel. I don't know if we're calling it a brothel, where they are, the place where they are. Drawing parallels between them there, they're not choosing to be there, they've been trafficked there. And drawing parallels between this, there's recently been a campaign of the Jeffrey Epstein survivors holding up pictures of themselves when they were younger, and just trying to imagine what they must have been feeling. They were probably in a similar situation to that at times. Who knows what really went on? And so I think that very much coloured my perception of specifically that part of the storyline. And we don't necessarily know exactly what they are, the crime family, the Vors, are trading in, but for sure it's people, probably drugs as well. We see Kirill get, a load of bottles of wine off the back of a lorry. So it's probably a lot of stuff. I think the fact that they were talking about connections in Kabul indicates that that's heroin. Yeah. So I think, and I'm just, like I said, I just couldn't help but draw parallels between that, and really, it made it feel more real and therefore more grotesque and therefore more uncomfortable. So that's my sort of 2025 lens. And I think we will keep coming back to this, which is, I think I was loads younger. So there is definitely that when you watch these films back, like I was younger, I wasn't as like tuned into this stuff. But I also don't think we as a society were. No. That's not to say that it wasn't being talked about and that it wasn't out there. It just wasn't as accessible. Social media wasn't anywhere near like it is today. And so in amongst the memes and the silly cat videos, I consume a lot of educational content that teaches you about these things and brings these conversations to the forefront. And I think most people are doing that too. And so I think we just know more about these topics, particularly if you are I mean, in my lefty, liberal, arty echo chamber, it feels like people just definitely know more about this stuff and care more. And so, in 2007, I probably wouldn't have even thought twice about you describing it as a sex scene and I don't think I would have been like, no, it was a rape, but I think that is definitely as a result of content that I've consumed. And so I do think we will keep coming back to this on this podcast. I think it's interesting as a concept because you can't help but put your current situation into your interaction with these films. Yeah,
I mean, I think in 2025 that scene just wouldn't be in the film because you can call it in 2007 and say, well, he just raped that woman. But then if he's somewhere near to being a protagonist in this film, and it feels like he is at some point, it's like, I'm not going to emotionally invest in I mean, I don't think anyone does emotionally invest in this film. I think this is one of the film's weaknesses is, like you say, there's no like emotional feedback from this film. The kiss thing is like weird. Like I don't know why it was very clear that they were not going to be a couple or anything like that, even though there's like light flirtations through it, although you have to try and see through Naomi Watts' acting to kind of get it. Shots fired. I think even back then we wouldn't be emotionally investing in a protagonist who's raped someone.
No.
So they just wouldn't have that scene in there.
No.
Or there would be some emotional connection between those two people or something. Or that he secretly loves her or something like that. I don't know.
Or he'd be like, I'm going to fake this, be like, but act like I'm doing it kind of thing.
Right.
I've got to do this. Right. So make it look real. Something like that.
Yeah. It's, oh God. But also, and not to kind of like throw a spanner in the tonal works right now, I think people would expect him to, post Jason Bourne, people would expect him to use that towel to disarm and disable those two guys in the sauna with a whippy manoeuvre, a towel whip.
a whippy towel manoeuvre and a willy wiggle waggle.
Yeah. The willy waggle would be like the flourish at the end of having taken them out, the two guys. Taking out his guys with his guys. Taking out the two guys with his boys.
Well, I've got to laugh, haven't you? Otherwise we'd just be like depressed.
Yeah. I think it is interesting. Like Stephen Knight had obviously been scratching at this particular thing for some time. In the same way that someone like Tom McCarthy was interested in telling stories about immigrants and essentially detention centres. That's what that's where his story was sort of centred on. Yeah. And Stephen Knight, in the same way, I don't know if you'd seen Dirty Pretty Things, but like it doesn't talk about trafficking, but it does talk about how vulnerable immigrants are when they come here to work. Yeah. And that, they have no worker protections. And Audrey Tauto's character in it is sort of sexually exploited by her employer. She's not trafficked in the same way, but it's grim, but it doesn't really scratch the surface of like the trafficking aspect and where that leads. And so you almost feel like there's this arc over time of awareness, even in the sort of nascent internet, social media age, to where we are now. Yeah. So I think we're always going to have this conversation about, what aspects of this film or any film like it would make it into 2025. How would it be reinterpreted? Yeah. Which you can't help but, well, I can't help but think is like almost hopeful in a way, but I don't know.
Well, you mean that we've come a long way, and that we just know that we couldn't depict it that way?
You said it yourself, like we didn't have the awareness or the language, I think, back then, or the technological platforms to have these conversations. You might have a really robust dinner party conversation or whatever with your mates, along the same lines, but like that's not the same as having like a conversation or being part of a movement in like the any time from 2015 onwards.
Yeah. You're right. Just can't say anything these days, can you?
You can't depict anything these days.
Can't depict anything these days.
So a few things to say. I obviously mentioned that Viggo Mortensen did a lot of research. He went to Moscow and just kind of like listened to folks and just started to talk to people. He learnt a bit of Russian. He learnt some phrases, which is why his Russian in it sounds kind of good. I think he took it seriously. And a funny thing happened when he'd just finished a day's filming, and he's obviously got all the tattoos and stuff. He went into a local pub just in the outfit that he wore with all the tattoos and everything, and he heard two people near him, two tourists, just chatting in Russian, and then they clocked him and they started looking at his tattoos. I think they were scared that he was a Russian gangster.
Oh, wow.
I know, amazing stuff.
Wow, that's good. Good bit of triv.
Yeah, brilliant. And you know the bit where he kind of does that thing with his throat and then like looks at Stepan. Yeah, David Cronenberg said, who told you about that? And he said, I just made it up.
Oh, it looked good. I was like, oh, maybe that's like a real Russian like expression.
No, it's like giving him the eye or something. Yeah. It was very clever.
Wow.
He kept throwing stuff in like that. The bit where he puts the cigarette out on his tongue, he just like spontaneously did that. And then Cronenberg said, I love that. Let's do it again. And he was like, oh crap. He had to do it like a few times to get it right.
Right, Tay, the time has come to do our ratings.
I think maybe I'll pick a rating and then we'll take points off of it for making you watch the film.
Okay. So
I'm going to give it... This is so tricky. I genuinely like this film, but the reasons that I like it are quite limited. So... I think it's a 3.5 for me, and I think it gets half a point for like the whole film, and then 1.5 points each for Viggo Mortensen and David Cronenberg, and an extra half for the Willy stuff. So that's 4.
That is 4.
You can affect my rating now with your with your retribution.
Yeah, well, I just don't think the film's that good, so we'll take away that half.
Yep.
And
back down to 3.5.
We'll keep 1.5 for Viggo Mortensen, and I guess the 1.5 for what's his chop? No, let's do 1 for Cronenberg. Okay. So 2.5. Right.
2.5 overall.
Yeah.
Nothing for the story.
I didn't think it was that good.
All right. What do you think, what is it, 20-year-old Lucy would have made of this film? You probably wouldn't have watched it, would you?
I didn't watch it, and I probably wouldn't have, no. It wouldn't have grabbed my attention. I wasn't into Lord of the Rings, really, and so I wouldn't have been like, oh, Viggo Mortensen, I need to go and watch. I know I should. You'd think I would be, because I like fantasy, but I think I've watched 1 and 2, but not the third one. Planning to do a marathon.
That one is the frickin' Viggo show.
Yeah. So that's probably why I wasn't on the Viggo bandwagon. And I was much too busy watching, classic Hollywood films. So
Stardust.
No, I wasn't watching Stardust. I mean, like films from like the 1930s.
You were watching, The Big Easy.
Yeah, because I was like deep in my degree. In first year as well, did a whole module on silent films, so I was sat in the dark watching these silence. But yeah, I wouldn't have watched it, but probably would have had very similar reactions. I think I'd have thought a bit meh and a bit too violent, and probably wouldn't have taken much away from it. I do think it is a guy film. I really do. I think it's one of those films that the guys are like, oh, watch this great film at the weekend. You should definitely try and catch it. Eastern Promises. It's about these Russian gangsters.
I was working on films at the time, working on like reviewing films. I didn't review this film, but I watched it. I'm pretty sure, like many a critic, I was like, oh, it's really good. It really Cronenberg coming into his own in a different genre.
I've never heard your voice do that.
Yeah, I think the the nuances of it, some of it would have been lost on me, but I think it would have like kept my attention, and I would have seen I would have thought that it was watchable and above average, for kind of not an unexpected film for David Cronenberg to make, having seen a few Cronenberg films at that point. I watched a lot of Cronenberg films in the 90s, so this would have been refreshing. But otherwise, I would have made all the noises that I imagine the critics made. It sounded a bit like this, yes. It was good. I enjoyed it. I mean, it's tough. It's a tough watch. Trust me, it's not fun. And 89% on Rotten Tomatoes.
There we go. I'm not in that 89%.
And the audience score 83%. So I think there's a lot of the kind of some of the the gender politics that's been lost on people back then, and I definitely think today as well. But yeah, the end. I do want to say one thing. I thought that Armin Mueller-Stahl was really good in it.
He was brilliant.
Really unpleasant. It comes back to subtlety again, but he was menacing, but not in a way that like he gets up in your face. It was all very reserved. It was all, very low key, but like you looked at him and you were like, this man has done some very bad things in his life, which we find out in the film. So that is very well written and well played.
Don't you think he looks like Tom Hanks?
Like aged up Tom Hanks?
Yeah, he looks like an old Tom Hanks.
Yeah, he does actually.
He does.
Shit. All right then, Lucy, it sounds like we did it. Did we do it?
We did it. All
right, well, folks, thanks for bearing with us while we argued our way through Eastern Promises. It was an interesting watch, and not one that you should enter into lightly. But it has its merits. Brackets Viggo Mortensen. Thank you, Lucy. Thank you, folks at home. If you want to get in touch with us, you can email us at 07podcast@gmail.com. Meanwhile, we'll see you on the next one. Say goodbye, Lucy.
Goodbye, Lucy.